So instead of just saying, okay, we're going to pair this wine with this food, you're going to get this, 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 and then moving on, I like to explain the why behind wine, the whys, and how to look for different things. So slowing down and really trying to make people understand that your nose isn't broken, your palate isn't broken, nothing's wrong with you. It's just it's like a muscle, like any other thing. You are weak at first, right? But then you start lifting weights and then you get muscle. You're able to use it more.
Welcome to the J. Well CFO Show. I am your host, Jeremy Wells, and with me today is Kara Joseph. Really excited to have this guest on. She's going to switch things up for us a little bit, talk about a topic we haven't talked about. Tell us about the wine business and how that's going on here in Northeast Florida. So, Kara, thank you so much for being here. You're a sommelier. Tell us what that means. Tell us what your business is. Tell us how you got into that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And it's always very exciting to kind of get to advocate and talk about wine up here in Northeast Florida because, it's not as, popular or as exciting perhaps as New York or California, but I think there is a great place for wine up here in Jacksonville. So I think that's a great place to start. What is a sommelier? It's a word that, first of all, not many people know how to say. It's a word that can be rather intimidating, and it also just can be hard to define for some folks. So essentially, I like to simplify it. I'm the wine girl. I'm just someone that's very passionate about wine, which combines a lot of the study of wine. So essentially, it's a certification that you achieve through a body called the Court of Master Sommeliers. So that's your first. Yeah. So
that's impressive.
Right. It sounds very, very fancy, right? So
medieval kind of.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. But essentially, you can't technically be a sommelier unless you go through either them or another society. But we'll just focus on the court because that's kind of the main one. And it just combines the theory of wine, so understanding every grape of the world, every region of the world, every possible, on paper book expression of wine and history and things of that nature. And then it combines tasting, so kind of blind tasting wine, understanding the structure of wine and being able to taste. And then it also combines the service of wine. So presenting wine at a restaurant, hosting a dinner party. So any type of minute detail about the service of wine is also required. So that's, in a nutshell, going through those three things in a day of testing. If you pass, you become a certified sommelier. So that's kind of the formal way to put it, but the less formal way is just someone that is very well versed on wine and that can kind of create an experience with it. So, yeah.
Very cool. So, when you're talking about the different grapes, the different varieties, I think for a lot of us, it's, we feel pretty good about ourselves if we correctly chose the red or the wine with whatever we ordered at dinner, right? So, how deep do you get into this with a lot of people? What do we need to be thinking about when we sit down at the restaurant and say, tonight I feel like wine, help me out here?
That's awesome. That's a great question, which kind of leads into what I'm doing up here with my certification as a sommelier. I founded a business called Wine Inspired, and that's my way to kind of answer that question for you. So what I do is I actually kind of create these experiences for people to teach them how to work with wine or interact with wine at a restaurant or in their homes. So the best place to start is just kind of learning the basic language of wine and learning what you like and how to kind of express what you like. And that's a bit about what I offer, is just showing people different kinds of wine and helping them understand how it pairs with food, how to source it, and communicate what one might enjoy. So that's kind of the first big step, is learning that about yourself will help you in a restaurant, in a wine shop. And then having the language to talk to a server or talk to a sommelier or a wine steward at a wine shop is kind of the baseline, the best place to start.
Gotcha. It can just be a little intimidating, right? Because they'll hand you the wine list. The waiter will hand you the wine list, and it's just pages and pages. And I
Right.
don't know the difference of any of these. And then, you'll have the wine pairings with the particular, menu item that you'll order,
Sure.
but I don't know if I'm actually going to like that
Exactly.
wine, right? And so, there's a lot. It's just an intimidating thing, and then of course there's the cost, right?
Mhm.
Is this $80 bottle of wine really going to be 10 times better than this $8 bottle of wine? And so there's a lot of these kinds of decisions that go into it. So, what is wine inspired? How is it helping, break down all this
Exactly.
confusion, all this intimidation?
I love it. So essentially, just to kind of piggyback on what you mentioned about, okay,
Mhm.
how do I know if I'm going to like it, or all this
Yeah.
minutia around working with wine and trying to understand it. It's just not being afraid to ask questions is kind of my other big suggestion. So really just being honest with the person that's helping you choose wine, or the person at the restaurant, is just asking questions in the sense where, tell me a little bit more about this wine, or is there another wine in this price bracket that will fit my taste? So being unafraid to ask questions is a great another way to start learning
Yeah.
more. But what Wine Inspired does in Jacksonville is kind of creating that bridge between people that are interested in wine and restaurants and wine shops and distribution channels. So I kind of like to view myself as the bridge between, say, a private individual and how they like to experience wine, and all these outlets for using it and drinking it and eating with it and buying it at a wine shop. And I also love to kind of do the vice versa. So taking, wines that I have great relationships with, say a wine shop, and being able to use those wines in someone's home and create an
Mhm.
experience like that. And to kind of also answer that question, I can use an example, right?
Yeah,
So I think a
for sure.
great example for me is I taught a class at UNF. So education to me is the forefront of wine and making it feel really approachable and fun for people, because that's the most important part, right? So I taught a class at UNF, and a group of students got together and they wanted me to come into a private home and teach a class. So that's a lot about what Wine Inspired does as well, is bringing these experiences to people privately as well. So we did a smelling class, because I'm sure, is smelling wine sometimes intimidating for you as well?
Oh,
Or,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
Well, you see people, they're swirling the glass and they're sticking their nose in it, and
and you're
I
like,
I
what
I
am
just
I
smell
doing?
wine. I don't know.
So that was a big concern for a lot of my students and people in general, is just to think, okay, what am I smelling? What am I looking for? How is all of this working? So I put together a sensory class where we'll use Sauvignon Blanc, for example. That was one of the wines we talked about. So Sauvignon Blanc smells like citrus and herbs and jalapeno and these green
Mm,
notes and all this interesting aroma. So I put together a kit where we use those real smells, so real grapefruit and real tarragon and real jalapeno, and then I was able to guide them to find it in the glass.
mm.
Now, what if I told you that none of those elements are actually inside of the glass? So this is something I
Right,
always like to talk about. The only thing in a glass of wine is the juice of the grapes. A lot of people think they must put in citrus or they must
right.
put in these elements, but it's just how the chemicals and genetics of a grape come about and express themselves from fermentation. So that was kind of my way to give my students and this event a way to find aromas in wine and kind of answer those questions and create that clarity for them. And then we were able to talk about, okay, I like this certain part about wine, or, oh, I really like this wine because I was smelling and tasting these things. So I was kind of able to give them that knowledge that they could use and then go to the wine shops and explore that.
Yeah, that part right there is incredibly interesting, because I will pick up a bottle of wine, at the store, or I'll read the description on the wine list, and it'll say these three or four or five things that I'm supposed to taste, or I guess supposed to smell, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I struggle. I'm supposed to be tasting dark chocolate, and I just taste wine. I'm supposed to be tasting cherries and I just
Exactly.
taste wine. So, I guess that's another aspect of the intimidation, right? Is even if I'm being told what to be
Right. You're
looking
like,
for,
"That's
sometimes I'm still
serious."
struggling, right? Yeah. And it makes me, am I missing out on the experience? Did they not
Right.
give me the right one? Like, I don't
I
know
know.
what
Yeah.
happened here.
Like, there is no dark chocolate or mocha or cocoa in this. And
Right.
that's something else I like to do is just two big things: slow people down a little bit.
Hmm.
So instead of just saying, okay, we're going to pair this wine with this food, you're going to get this, 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 and then moving on, I like to explain the why behind wine, the whys, and how to look for different things. So slowing down and really trying to make people understand that your nose isn't broken, your palate isn't broken, nothing's wrong with you. It's
Right.
just you, it's like a muscle, like any other thing. You are weak at first, right? But then you start lifting weights and then you get muscle. You're able to use it more. So your palate and your nose is a muscle. And if you understand what to look for, and if you understand what it all means in the greater context of wine, you can really start to work those muscles. And that's what I also like to consider, my events, my classes, any experience I create with wine is just starting to show you have a muscle, and B, learn how to work it out and make it fun and make it engaging and sharing that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. When you start, for example, my wife and I, we went through a period when, I was finishing up grad school. There wasn't a ton of money for going out and that kind of stuff. And so we started cooking at home a lot more. And when you're cooking at home a lot more, when you first get started, it's kind of disappointing because you don't get those flavors like you're used to from even like fast food. But then you start to realize that it's a lot of salt and sugar, right? And so you can start to recreate and then even start to invent some flavors of your
Love.
own that you like. It's just you have to start becoming aware of what you actually like. And I think, a big part of it is I know when I sit down to a meal where wine is going to get ordered, I feel like I've got one shot at that. I got to get this one glass and that's really it. And so,
Trust the
I've
team.
done, yeah, right. And so, just that it's a lot of pressure, right? I got to make the right choice, and
Even for me too, if I'm, especially as a sommelier, I'm like, oh man, I got to make the right choice here.
yeah,
But
right,
yeah,
right.
I totally
Yeah,
see.
yeah, but it is just an experimentation. You just got to keep trying new things. And so, so I'm in St. Augustine. Here in St. Augustine, we've got the San Sebastian Winery. I've been fortunate enough to be able to do their tour where they do a tasting, and you get to go through 5 or 6 or 7 different, of their varieties or whatever, and it ends up just being kind of yeah, that's good. I could drink some more of that.
Right.
No, I didn't really care for that one, right? So let's say you get to that point, right, where you start to figure out, okay, this variety, the Cabernet was good, but the Sauvignon not so much, right? So where do you take it from there, right? What's the next step?
Right. In terms of just a consumer, someone that's getting more into wine.
Right, right. Because now, it's like, okay, if I start to figure out, red versus white, well, now I start to figure out the different varieties or whatever, but now I've actually got to pick a bottle, I've got to
Yeah.
actually pour a glass, right? So,
A little bit of knowledge.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Well, and that's kind of also why I created Wine Inspired. It's
Mhm.
because I want to take wine and start in a lot of different places with how to kind of get people and the community geared up to be able to kind of be less intimidated. So, I mean, to kind of take that question and turn it a little bit on its head,
Yeah,
I want the servers and the people that are in the restaurants to be well suited to help someone.
right.
And I think that's almost the better way to answer that question is we need wine professionals in our restaurants to be able to guide. And I kind of see myself as hopefully being able to kind of get that momentum going.
Gotcha.
So I'm using Wine Inspired in my business to combine and get a lot of industry professionals together. So people from places like Royal Palm Wine Shop here in Jacksonville, and Black Sheep and Bellwether and Orsay, and these really awesome restaurants, and getting blind tasting groups and theory groups together to where if you go to that restaurant, your server will be 9 times are 10 times more accessible to you to be able to help you. So it's kind of like a give and take between the gatekeepers of the wine and the person ordering the wine. So that's just kind of my own personal way to do that in Jacksonville.
No, I like that. Because that takes, if I think about it, the way you're saying is, don't worry about picking the right wine, just find a restaurant that takes wine
Right.
seriously and let their staff help you
Yeah.
and take that pressure off yourself.
And then you learn by doing that. So, I mean, by seeking the guidance and by using the guidance and seeing if it, hopefully that it works, you're learning just through kind of osmosis.
Yeah.
And you look, 9, 10 times more savvy in my eyes if you are able to ask the right questions rather than trying to be all, I know what I'm doing and picking maybe the wrong bottle. So that's kind of another big tip.
I can definitely relate to that as an accountant, because a lot of people will start their small business and they'll get 6 months into it. And then they say, okay, maybe I should talk to a professional, then maybe I should talk to an accountant. And, it costs them a lot more to hire somebody to clean all of that mess up than it would have to just do it from the beginning. And, then, you're paying me money. Ask me questions, right? Don't feel like you're still all alone. That's the whole point of it, right? So you chose to go to this nice restaurant, sit down, pay, the staff to attend to you, ask them questions. Don't feel afraid, So I definitely relate to that mentality.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, good deal. Good deal. So what, you've alluded to some of this, but what are the specific services that Wine Inspired is offering? So you're working with restaurants, but it sounds like you're also working with individuals. So what does that look like?
Right. So essentially the best ways I have to kind of showcase my skills as a sommelier and kind of an experience creator is by the tastings, education, and events. Those are my big 3 kind of pillars for how to work with Wine Inspired. Tastings anywhere from, private parties or dinners and things of that nature. And then just in terms of business, and I mean, I know that anyone starting their own business, there's going to be challenges. And what I've learned is I can have that, say, private tastings, but in order to continue growing, I've got to incorporate other local passionate individuals. So I've got my private events, my wine tastings, but when I try to grow, I incorporate another passionate person that's doing something different, but relatable. So I work with a woman called Deanna Testa, who does Italian cooking classes. And we team up and we do homemade pasta making and wine pairing. So it's kind of like, that's something that I can do as well. So partnering up with those local individuals for private homes. Another big one is using restaurants and their cuisine and their wines to craft my personally led, wine and food pairing dinner. So just an example of that, I have them all over the city, but Biscotti's has always been such a great support of mine. And we do their kind of famous pizza with wines. And then I get Peterbrook involved. We bring in some Peterbrook and we do a fortified or dessert wine tasting. So we're learning about all these styles of wines intertwined with the cuisine, and not just me being like, okay, here's your pizza, here's your wine, go at it, but really getting to the explanation of the wine and the food and why they work and how they work. So that happens a lot in different restaurants. And then another big way to kind of get involved with me, I do some just kind of jump around tours of different parts of the city. So I create like kind of a food and wine crawl, if you will, for like San Marco and 5 Points, Avondale, things of that nature too.
Gotcha.
Just really focused on these events and experiences.
And interesting. Very cool. Very cool. So what are, aside from just the trying to get as much education out there to, a population, especially this side of the ocean that just, really doesn't, have the experience when it comes to wine, what are some of the big challenges, 1 or 2 big challenges that running this business, and how are you dealing with those challenges?
So first and foremost, what you mentioned earlier is that, the bookkeeping, the things that I know wine, I know what I want to do. I know how I want to relate to people, but like you said, it's so important that you get that big foundation of your accounting in place, your business practices, your marketing, all of these
Mm-hmm.
factors that you don't want to think about because I'm a wine person, I want to do this.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of my initial big challenges is that, yeah, I get to spend 2 hours, hopefully every night at an event or a private home or something. And that's my fun. But I got to put in those other 10 hours of making sure everything's functioning business-wise, making sure it's profitable, making sure I'm tracking everything, marketing, ticketing. So it's that 10 hours of stuff that I don't love for that 2 hours of getting able to be with people and share my passion for wine. So I think that was one of the big, will always be a challenge for anything you do in life is the 10 hours less.
Yeah. Right.
And then just another really, I'm sure, challenge that everyone faces is that you create this business, you create something you think everyone is going to like. And then at first I experienced this. I thought, wow, not getting much feedback. I mean, no one wanted me, or, I felt like I wasn't being able to use the business I created. And that was just a struggle to where I thought, am I ever going to be able to fill every night with an event? Am I going to be able to, keep this going? But the biggest thing I learned there is that you have to find other ways. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to create these relationships and understand that it's going to take a year to just get into a place where you can call upon a relationship you built and say, hey, I want to do this event, and have support and grow and learn that just because at first it's not something people are resonating with, it doesn't mean that it's never going to be that way. And I found that there are lots of different expressions to use what I do and continue to grow with that mentality, not a mentality of defeatism, but more of, okay, this didn't work. What's the next step? Like, what am I going to do next, kind of thing.
No, that first, phase of the business, that infancy stage where you just don't know if it's going to take off or not, but every day you just got to keep at it. You got to keep at it. And, you just got to keep up that faith and that hope that at some point you'll land that first big client, or you'll land that first big event, or you'll land that first big customer. And then, it'll take off. Right. But it's so much building up steam to that point, and that's a huge difference, right? Just getting through that first stage.
And knowing that it's not, or knowing that maybe there are some failures, and I know it's so cliche about failure, but till the end, I will always appreciate failure. I think it's so, like, little failures. That's what makes you kind of keep pushing forward.
I've got a marketing person, like you said. That's one of the things that I recognize. I'm naturally introverted. I'm an accountant, right? It's my job to just sit in front of the computer and crunch numbers all day, right? So marketing is not part of my, natural, set of strengths. And so once I had the budget, right, one of the first things I went out and did was, I found somebody to help me with the marketing. And, you start figuring out, right, that you have to get help with those aspects of the business that you're weak on, so that you can spend more time focusing on the strengths. But he always tells me, look at each interaction, whether it's a face-to-face, meeting out on the street, whether it's a podcast interview, whether it's, a prospect, a call with a big prospect. It's all an experimental phase, right? It's all a chance to try something new and see what works, see what doesn't, right? And so you can't put too much weight on any single interaction, and you can't get discouraged by those failures, because every failure is an opportunity to get to the next success. So you just have to keep going through that. Yeah. It's not easy though.
No, it is not.
Yeah. But it's fun, like there's a reason that you choose to start a business and not just be an employee, be a corporate lackey for the rest of your life.
I mean, and you spend so much time working for someone else's dreams and goals and what they want, you really just lose sight of why you started or why you're even doing what you're doing. And I always had said this, it's like if I spend a year or something and I wake up every morning thinking, just not having any type of motivation, that's something where I didn't ever want to be involved with something like that.
Right. But no, it's fantastic. It sounds like you're doing a lot of positive things, bringing, wine to the forefront, especially, doing it through these restaurants. I think, yeah, that's definitely one place where, you sit down and you see the wine pairings there on the menu, and it's still intimidating. I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I can't really order something different because I'm not the expert. I didn't pair all that, and
Right.
there's a lot of education that can happen there. I think it's a really interesting service of, just help, because, you're not only helping the patrons, you're helping the restaurants too, right? You're
Exactly.
helping them be better at what they're doing as well. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Good
kind
deal. So go
oh,
ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you first.
So if somebody wants to get into this, if they say, you know what, I enjoy wine more than, just for recreational purposes, this is something that I'd like to take seriously as well. Maybe they want to be a sommelier. Maybe they want to, do what you're doing. Where would you tell them to get started? How would they, where's the first step?
That's great. So I created something to exactly answer that question and to give people a place to start because,
Awesome.
as you can imagine, I meet a lot of people that they express interest of, hey, I really want to learn more about the theory of wine and I want to study wine, or, oh, I really want to learn how to blind taste. So I started an organization called Jax Wine Revolution. So Jax Wine Revolution is a industry professional group that also accepts people that might be interested in getting into the wine industry. And we do 2 nights a week where we focus on wine theory, how to study wine, the different organizations for certification, all that kind of focused information. And then we have a night where we do blind tasting and learn how to taste wine and learn how to figure out all of that muscle working and get your palate and your nose together. So short answer, Jax Wine Revolution is the
Awesome.
first place to start, especially if it's in Jacksonville.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are on Instagram.
Good deal. Good
Yeah,
deal. So Jax Wine Revolution, and then Wine Inspired. If you're actually wanting some help, thinking
right.
about wine for yourself, ordering wine, if you're running a restaurant, thinking about those kinds of things.
And as we are talking about kind of reaching, and that's always my goal, is to reach the most amount of people to
Sure.
help share wine. So I do have a book coming out as well.
Cool.
So that's something else I highly advocate for is, what you love, you have a business, you have all this information, all this passion. I would encourage lots of people to put that to paper, but side thought. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
No,
I
absolutely.
book that is coming out in probably summer of
Okay.
this year, and it is called If Wine Could Talk. And it's essentially the intertwining of my personal story, which I didn't get too into today, but that's, I guess, why there's a book.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the personal relationship with wine and how this girl from the University of Florida becomes a sommelier and all that interesting storytelling intertwined with basic wine knowledge. So kind of one chapter, the story behind my relationship with wine, and then a little bit of a foundation for people to learn about wine. So that
Very
is
awesome. Very awesome. I think that's a nice little teaser. I can't wait to see it come out.
sure.
I'm gonna have to pick up
Great.
a copy now. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good deal. Well, we will make sure to have links to all of to both the organization and your business, in the show notes and the description for this. But if people want to get in touch with you directly, pick up this conversation, find out more about you, find out more about your business or that organization, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
So you can go to my website. I think that's the easiest, just to have all my contact, email, all about what I do. So www.bewineinspired.com. So that's one way. And then you can, Instagram is always another good option. So it's at Wine Inspired with Kara on Instagram, and you can easily see
Awesome.
what I've been up to. So
Good deal. Good deal. We'll definitely have links to all that. Kara, thank you so much. It's been fantastic having you. This is definitely a topic that, I'm trying to educate myself on, that I would love to know more about. So it's been a real pleasure, real value having you here. Looking forward to seeing some restaurants in this area get better as far as, improve their wine selection, their explanation of what's going on with that. So definitely think that's a great service. Looking forward to seeing how this business takes off. And again, thank you very much for being here. Any last last notes, last suggestions, last ideas you want to throw out there to our listeners?
Just a huge thank you for having me, and being able to express what I love to do every day is always a pleasure. And I'm always here. Any of your wine needs, I am here to help out. So
awesome.
hey.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much again, Kara. This has been the J Well CFO Show. I am your host, Jeremy Wells. You can find me at JWellCFO across all the social media and at jwellcfo.com. Again, Kara, thank you so much. Thank you to the listeners and the viewers. Have a great day.
Bye.